to the second episode of The Burning Bench. I'm Willie, and today I'm going to show you how to size a ring down. Woohoo! Okay. Exciting, isn't it? I think it is. I don't know. I guess after 41 years, it's not quite as exciting as it was the first time. However, it still works. Some of the tools I'm going to use, one is our ring. It actually says bracelet gauge, but the increments are perfect for full sizes. And then I've gone through and in between, I can point with this, is probably better. In between each full size, I have marked a hash mark for the half size. That way, if I'm taking 3/4 of the size out, one size, half size, quarter size, it's really easy to gauge it that way. And the way what I use to gauge it is I use my dividers. So say I'm taking a full size out, take my dividers, I measure, and I'm ready. Next tool we'll use, of course, is jeweler saw. Very important. I say that a lot, don't I? It's okay. Because when I say it, it's important. Okay. We'll be using emery board, our regular 6-inch half round file, and our 7-inch barrette needle file. Third hand. And then our torch, which right now isn't lit. We're going to light it. Okay. That means we mean business when we light the torch. Okay, so here we are. Then also we'll use our flux. So we're going to be using just about everything that I've showed you in episode 1 as far as equipment and tools on our bench. So I have my job envelope down here, and I'm supposed to size this ring to a 6.5. One of the very first things you want to do when you're sizing a ring, especially one with a lot of diamonds in it, is you want to make sure that everything's tight. So I'll use a graver, and then there's times I'll just use my tweezers to check center stones and large side stones. So I'll bring my microscope over. And I will check every stone. Okay, so far, so good. This is where a microscope really comes in handy. Well, see, there's one that's loose. Now for tightening, I am looking for a beading tool. Okay, so I have found my beading tool. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to press down. Okay, I think that's got it. Oh, there's another loose one. Let's tighten that sucker up. It's amazing how many rings you get that are new from the manufacturer that have loose stones in them. My theory is they go through inspection after they're built, and then they're hit with after inspection they go and steam them so they're absolutely clean, maybe thrown in the ultrasonic again, and that loosens everything up, or can loosen stuff up. Now this particular ring has been worn, so, and then these stones on the corner, they almost stick out, and that's really kind of not the best situation because they get hit easily. and loosen up. And they're set in rose gold, and rose gold is softer than white gold. That's why on a piece of jewelry, your center stones always set in a white gold head, and that's because the tensile strength on white gold is stronger than yellow, and especially rose gold. Rose gold gets its color because it's alloyed with copper, and copper's soft, so the gold itself is much softer than, say, white or yellow. So, okay, everything's tight now. Now what we have to do is we put it on our mandrel. We see what size it is. Well, that's interesting. It says 6.5. Okay, there must be another ring in the job. That ring was already 6.5. So we take the second ring out of the job and we measure it. And it's a size 7. Today, most of your rings come that you get from the manufacturer come in stock size 7. When I started this trade a million years ago, they used to be 6.5, and I guess America's getting bigger. I know. As I get older, I get a bit bigger. Okay. So, same thing. First thing we do is we make sure everything's tight. Now we'll be sizing this ring down, and stones are going to loosen up as we size them, but we want to make sure they're tight before we size the ring. Okay, looks good. I'm going to put it on my mandrel, verify the size. It's just right on 7. So what I do is, I'll set this over here so we can see it better, is well, let's pull our tray out. Okay, that's better. So I'm going to take my dividers, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to mark this at 1/2 size. Okay. So I've got that marked. Then I'll come back to my ring. I always try to size a ring as close to the middle of the back as possible. Okay, so I'm getting that, and then I'm going to mark it, and then I'm going to take my side cutters. On a heavy ring shank, I'll go ahead and use my jeweler saw. This is pretty thin, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my clippers and clip it. Whoopsie. Here's my piece of gold. Now what I have on my workbench is I have a little can for 10 karat yellow, which I usually mix my rose gold in there, my 10 karat. Then I have a can for 10 karat white, 14 yellow, 14 white, and then sterling silver. Now, I know that this is 14 karat. That's the other thing. You always read the ring, inside of the ring, make sure what carat it is. So I'm going to put this piece of gold into my can that says 14 karat yellow. I don't do enough rose gold to have its own little can, so I just mix them, and that's just the way it is. Okay, so TMI. Okay, here we go. We are going to now, we want to make sure that we're flush. So I'll take my barrette file and file those, because when you go and use the cutters to cut, you don't get a smooth surface, even though you might be using a flush cutter. Okay, so next I'm going to take these Shank Pliers. Now, I showed you these in episode 1, and they're kind of cool. They have a metal half round in there, and then they have a nylon piece in here. This way it doesn't mar the surface of the ring. So I'll go, and then on a ring like this, where I know stones are probably going to loosen up, I still like to try to bend from the side. Now, I'm only going down a half size, so it's not like I'm going down 2 sizes. And when I start having to go down a couple sizes, I will bend from the middle, but then tighten my stones immediately. Otherwise, they'll fall out, and then you got to search for them, and then you got to put them back in. And so the more we can prevent, the better off we are. So let's get these matched up. So bend a little bit from each side and match this up. Make sure it's matched up evenly. Okay, so now I have it matched up. So now we're ready to solder. Make sure I have solder on my solder pad, of course. And I do. So this is where I go and I get one of my soldering tweezers. I am mixing it in my denatured alcohol and boric acid solution, and then lighting it on fire. So that burns off the denatured alcohol, leaves our film to prevent fire scale. Okay, and in the process of putting it in there, it kind of misaligned a bit, so we make sure that it's aligned. Come down here. Okay, so now we're ready to solder. We take our flux, put a little bit of liquid flux on there, or paste if that's what you prefer using. Get our solder pick. We like to try to make sure that our solder pick, because it builds up a crust on it from heating it. So we make sure that we have it cleaned off because it'll pick the solder up better. Let's check our flame. Okay, that looks pretty good. Add a little oxygen. We don't want it too hot because we'll melt the ring down. Trust me, it's never a good idea to melt your shank. It's a lot more work. So let's go ahead, pick up a piece of solder. Come over here. Heat that a little bit, burn off the flux. Put our solder on. Now sometimes what I'll do, especially on rose gold or a thin shank, is I'll take and I'll put some tweezers like this, and I won't let all the pressure. I still have some back pressure on it, so it's not too tight. That way what it does is sometimes when you heat it, I know you probably saw the ring move a little bit when I first added heat to it. Well, heat does funny things. It starts expanding the metal, and the metal will move, or the tension will pull away from the ring and open the gap on your sizing. And you don't want that to happen because then you can get pit marks in it, and that's not advantageous either. So now we've got the ring size down. We got it soldered. Now we want to file it and clean it up. So I'm going to go ahead. I use my armrest take that out, and then come over here. And the first thing I always do is file the inside. So, cleaned up the inside, it's all filed. Then I put it on the mandrel, and I verify my size. I'm right at 5.5. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rawhide mallet, and I'm just going to lightly hit this to make sure it's rounded out. Sometimes in today's jewelry, you get a lot of hollowing out of the inside of the shanks, and so you have to be really careful with the mallet. If you hit it too hard, you're going to dent it, and there again, that causes problems. Okay, next, now I want to clean it up and trim it up. So we're going to go, and because I use the right amount of solder and it's not really built up around it, sometimes you use more solder depending upon the ring. This particular one, I use just the right amount, so I can be able to, I can clean it up with just my file card, or no, it's not a file card, it's a emery board. All right. And you notice how I'm using both sides of my emery board. Okay, cleaning this up. Okay, this is balled up a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file and I'm going to lightly file that down. The one thing about jewelry you want to do is you really want to just kind of work at a slow, even pace so you don't overwork your piece. Okay, and get the top side. Okay, if you notice, there's still right here a little bit of mismatch. So what I like to do is I just like to kind of take my half round and I just kind of roll that edge and then even it up. Now I'm filing very lightly. Do the same on the other side. Okay, we have it sized down. Then the next step would be is polish. Polishing in itself is an art form. There's people in the industry, that's all they do is polish. It would kind of drive me a little paddywackies. You know, as it is, I probably polish a couple hours a day with the amount of work I do. But polishing, it's really kind of special. You know, you get to take something that's all scratchy and dull and make it shiny. And with me, any shiny object, I'm gone. At least that's what my wife says. And I have a tendency to believe her. So what we're going to do next is this job that I'm working on, actually I have to solder the two rings together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and we'll polish this. All right, see you in a minute. Got our rings soldered together, and now we're ready to polish. I'll cover soldering and the reason for that on a future episode, but right now, my favorite part, we're gonna make it shiny. All right. Our buffer consists of two sides. We have our rough polish, which smooths the surface, gets all our scratches out, and sets our surface up for that final polish. The compounds I use, the industry standard is Triple E and Red Rouge, which I used to use until I discovered bobbin compound and Fabuluster. Bobbing compound is similar to Triple E, except it's cleaner. And it's a little, has a little coarser cut. And so for me, I work the surface down quicker, and it doesn't take me as long to polish. My final polish, I use Fabuluster, and I like it because it's not a wax-based polish, and it really puts a nice shine on my jewelry. Okay, so you can see how I have this set up. I have an inside ring buff with a hard felt, and then my rag buff. First thing I'll do is I'll go and I'll put a sandpaper on here, and I'll sand the inside of my ring. That gets the inside all smooth and ready to polish. From there, I'll go to another handpiece, only this handpiece is set up with a soft camel hair brush, and I'll use the bobbing compound on it, and I'll go through and I'll polish the inside, I'll polish the outside, I'll polish the whole ring using this. And it really gets rid of all the scratches and sets the surface up to go to the rag buff and the hard felt to where it's a lot less work. And anytime you can save yourself a few minutes worth of work, you're better off. So what I'll do after I do that is I'll polish the inside, then I'll go to the hard felt, polish that, polish the outside, and if you've sanded it properly, it's already got a nice even shape to it, but this helps set up any final little thing that you might have missed. This, if you use your hard felt on the outside of the ring like this, it will take and get rid of anything, any divots or any low places. And then we go to the rag buff. And then once we're done with the rag buff, then we go to our final buff. And I'll use the inside ring buff again to the inside. And then I will use the rag buff to put that final polish on it. Now, one thing I also like using is I like to use an inside ring buff. And while I'm polishing, I'll take and put that on the inside ring buff, and it's a lot easier to get in and polish my ring. So right now I'm going to polish this ring. I'll run the video, but the polisher is very noisy, so you're just gonna have to listen to some music while I polish. All right, here we go. Have a ring polished. The next step, take it to the ultrasonic, let it shake for a while. What that does is loosen up all the polishing residues. Then we're going to steam it, wrap it, put it back in the bag, and send it on out to the store. The next episode, I'm going to show you how to size a ring up. Till then, I'm Willie. Thanks for tuning in.